Well, it's 4 rounds into the footy season, so we can start sorting out the contenders from the pretenders. Now, speaking of pretenders, it's time for another Variety Hour podcast. I'm Sergio Paradise, and here he is, Cameroonian runaway, Titus O'Reilly.
Yeah, that's how I got here. I don't look anything like people think.
Yeah.
Oh, what a com games.
Oh, can we get over it? I mean, gee, there's so much to talk about. We'll get to it shortly, but gee, it's been a remarkable last couple of weeks, I've got to say.
I got to say, the one thing I did that kind of, in hindsight, I think was a real benefit is I had the show on each night. So yeah. I missed a lot of com games.
Yeah, you did.
And I didn't really miss it.
Yeah.
It was just like, and in fact, for the closing ceremony, I saw most of it, but I missed the start of it because I was on stage and I was quite happy.
That's okay. So did the athletes.
Yeah, that's right. I saw as much as an athlete. But we should thank our sponsors and our supporters who have signed up. We had a few more sign up last week, and it really makes a difference between us being able to do this and all the writing I do and all those other things. Thanks to everyone who's come along to my comedy festival show.
They've been going pretty well, I hear.
Yeah, there's 6 shows left, but the next... we're recording this on a Tuesday, so Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are sold out, and when I checked this morning, there's like about 5 tickets left for the Saturday night and a few left for the Sunday, but not many. So my last one's in Melbourne.
One thing that's always amused me about just about every comedy festival show, but it's actually true in your case, every show when they write it up, they go, "This will sell out."
Yes.
And you know for sure that means they've sold bugger all tickets. When they put that. This will sell out, just hoping that you'll rush in and buy some. But in Titus's case, this will sell out.
Well, I think it will because there's not very many left, and I think I've sold out the last sort of 5 nights, and the next 5 are sold out, so... it's been pretty good.
At this rate, they'll be asking you to join Fleetwood Mac. So.
Yeah, that's the other announcement I have to make. I'm also coming up to Sydney the week after to do 4 shows up there. So
where are you doing those?
At the Factory
good
Theatre,
spot,
which is a nice theatre.
That's where we did our shows, isn't it?
We did. So I'm going to be doing the show I sort of have done down here. So if people want to come along to that, I'll put the link in the show notes. But Melbourne people, I think... it'll be hard to get tickets, but you might be able to get some for Sunday and Saturday night if you're very quick. We should mention that we just went through the worst round of football that I can remember in...
It was a shocker, wasn't it?
Some time. And I don't just mean because of individual teams, just the whole round was horrendous.
There was 1, maybe 2 good games, and I reckon 7 shockers. Well, and most of the shockers... Well, for various reasons. They weren't all the same. You know, some were one-sided, some was just crap football, but you're right, it was... Well,
the Swans-Bulldogs game was a cracker.
That was a good game.
The next best you could almost say, I think, was... it's a struggle too, say Essendon Port game was passable as a game. But the rest were not even vaguely entertaining. They were just horrendous to watch.
I know.
They weren't horrendous if your team was the one winning.
Well, Friday night, Collingwood, I watched that, watched them absolutely spank Adelaide, and that would have been great if you're a Collingwood supporter, and you know they were pretty pumped about it. But it wasn't a great game of footy, and geez, Adelaide. I mean, we'll get to Melbourne in a minute because neither of us are particularly happy with Melbourne this week. But other than Melbourne, there's no other team that seems to turn it up as easily as the Crows.
Turn off, you mean?
Yeah.
Like just not show up.
Turn it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just, Tex Walker and all these guys. Rory Sloan was clearly injured, so he was struggling. But so many of their so-called big guns, like 2 weeks before, Tex Walker and Jenkins were absolutely unbelievable. The other night, they could not buy for a kick.
And I'm still yet to believe that Collingwood are amazing. Like, I think I've always said this, that Collingwood have always had the effort. And I really do think they have always had the effort. I don't think they've got the polish. But the Crows, it was almost like it was raining. Yeah. The Collingwood were hard at it. And they just early on went,
just got all too hard.
This is a bit hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Like, it's the big question mark over the Crows because when they're on, they're that's why they got to the grand final last year. But it seems that they did it against North last year. Remember that game down in Tassie where they just they were down something like 70 points in the first quarter. So
that's right.
There's just games where they just don't show up.
Don't turn up. They just can't be bothered.
And Crows fans I know just tearing their hair out because they're like, there's no reason this should be happening. In fairness to the Crows, the exit of talent they've had, Cameron, Lever, Dangerfield before that, I do feel for them because, I know people say, well, they've got to work to retain, but there's no doubt it's harder for the interstate clubs. And, they've lost a lot of talent.
And they're pushing Tom Lynch out back to Melbourne.
You reckon he's going to go?
I reckon he'll be back in Melbourne next year. They've offered him a 2-year deal, and apparently he's not overly happy with the money. Right. But he wants 3. He wants 3 years, and they've said nah. So I reckon he's on his way back to Melbourne. He's a local boy, born and raised in Beaumaris. So I reckon Tom Lynch will be back. Now Tom Lynch is no Patrick Dangerfield. He's no superstar, but he's been a very, very handy forward for them for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Since he went over from St Kilda.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. I mean, are Collingwood suddenly good? This is a terrifying prospect.
It's hideous knowing that Collingwood when we say they've come good, they've been impressive the last few weeks. Now, really impressive last Friday night. And Richmond don't appear to be having any kind of premiership hangover, which in itself is disturbing. So can we see Richmond and Collingwood both being really good? It's just too much. And bloody Essendon came good on the weekend. You got the big 3.
Well, I tipped Essendon.
All suddenly getting ahead of themselves again.
I'm terrible at tipping, but I tipped Essendon. So.
Did you?
Well, the reason I tipped Essendon was just simply that the Power had won 3 games in a row, so they were sort of due for a loss. It was at Etihad, and I just thought Essendon played so poorly the week before that they're not that bad.
They have to bounce back.
They just can't. I just couldn't see them turning on that sort of performance, even if they tried again. It just was a danger game for Port. But the other game that was GWS played Freo. This was an okay game. Freo hung around. It just was Did you say how windy it was? Did you see this game?
I saw bits of it, but
there were shots on goal. Ryan Griffin had this shot on goal, and it was he kicked it fine, but the wind just took it and just went sideways and went like halfway off the ground. Like it was amazing. So you can kind of explain away why that wasn't a great game. Yeah. And Freo were back to their non-scoring best, but they weren't. Wasn't enough to throw your hands up.
They didn't play brilliantly, but there was the sign of a good team that even though they're not playing well and it's a crap game and the conditions aren't good, good teams make sure they still win. And they did. They won by 5 goals.
Yeah. There's no one that's leaping out yet.
No, except buddy Richmond.
Well, Richmond have been okay. I mean, they've struggled against...
been asked of them, basically.
Yeah, I don't think they've... they've been... we'll get to the Lions game, but they've been very good, and I just think they're not... But I don't think they're anywhere near their top. But the good news is they're still winning, and I think they're progressing towards it. Yeah. So, well, let's talk about this. Richmond-Brisbane. This was one of the worst games I've seen in a long time.
Did you watch it? I didn't watch it, but I kept...
Yeah, of course I did.
I kept an eye on...
the best comedy of the comedy festival.
In the bottom of the screen.
Oh, right.
Until at half-time I was thinking, and then I checked the AFL app and I thought, here we go. The AFL app's crashed again. It's broken again. Because they'd only kicked 4 behind till half time, but it was actually true.
Well, it was one of those games where the crowd sort of booed when Brisbane in the dying moments of the third quarter when they kicked their first goal, the crowd sort of booed. Like
the crowd were hoping they wouldn't score.
They're like sort of disappointment with the Richmond defence that they were leaking so much. But the Brisbane were just horrendous. It was just unbelievable. And the Tigers were great, but it was a bit like really what was happening is the Tigers were putting Brisbane under pressure and Brisbane just could not handle it at all.
Well, Brisbane have been up and about for a couple of weeks. And maybe they were due for a shocker. And they do seem, their effort seems to be a lot better this year than last year. But you still, you run through the team. It's still not a star-studded team, and they're probably due for a shocker.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of young kids they're relying on. But Danny Frawley said Luke Hodge should be in the stands and not playing anymore. And I'm like, really? We've talked about this before. If the whole team's playing badly, it's very hard to look good.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the guy trying to organise the defence and staunch the flow. I think it's a bit of a reaction to suddenly say, well... Yeah. let's get rid of him.
Or see, the implication there, or you take it further, he's suggesting that Brisbane are actually wasting a spot in their 22.
Yeah, like there's someone better just sitting on the side.
Someone else should be there. If Hodgie should be in the stand working on his assistant coach sort of workings, he's suggesting that this should be someone other than him. So they're wasting a spot by having Luke Hodge on the ground. Who takes that spot?
And they're feeling like he's probably teaching the people around him more than they'd ever learn it through anything else out on the ground in real time.
Exactly. You're not going to learn that from.
And I love this is the thing.
iPad.
We all do this a bit. Fans do this a bit, and so do the media even more so, where they act like these coaches are idiots. Like there's some superstar defender they've just forgotten's lying around the club.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot I had this triple Brownlow medalist. Just how silly of me.
Yeah, and we just got this bloke who's won 7 premierships,
Can you? It felt like Queensland footy this week took a big step backwards, sort of back to like last year.
How it should be, yeah.
The Q clashes this week.
Oh, it is too. Brisbane.
Can you imagine that?
And where are
that's going to win everyone rushing back? I'm assuming it's at the Gabba. I don't know, but
I suppose it would be. It won't be Carrara, obviously.
Yeah.
Given them the Commonwealth games, it would have been great to have the Q clash in another state.
Well, Dusty Martin outscored Brisbane in this game, kicked 6 goals. That's when you. In fact, there were 2 games this week where one player outscored the opposition, Ben Brown being the other at North. You don't get that often, but 2 in a round showed what a one-sided, pointless round this was.
And Dusty Martin, lazy 6, I reckon it was, if you could ever call 6 goals in a game lazy, that was a lazy 6.
Yeah.
I reckon he could have kicked 9 or 10 if he'd really gone.
If he'd really wanted to.
He got his 6. The team were playing well. He was doing whatever's necessary. But if he really wanted to, I reckon he could have kicked 8 or 9 easily.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest surprise watching that match when the game finished and I looked at the score was that Richmond had only scored 110 points.
Yeah.
Which I know is pretty harsh because the percentage difference was huge, but...
It looked like a 140-point thrashing, but it wasn't.
Well, I was thinking it looked like they always say, that this is like in a game like this, it's like a training drill.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I reckon Richmond train harder than this because when you're training, you even against your own side and people try.
And real witches' hats move more than some of the Brisbane players.
Better skills. The other next game was Sydney Bulldogs, and that was a cracker.
That was a good game. I did watch that one. That was a real good game.
Really good. I mean, a lot of Bulldogs fans were just thrilled that their team turned up 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
But it looked like... The Bulldogs got away, then Sydney pegged them back.
Yeah.
Then, really, the Bulldogs looked like a few times they were going to lose touch, but they just kept finding goals. Bontempelli had a great goal.
And then they looked like they might even pinch it towards the end.
Yeah.
But it was a good game of footy. And again, watching not just good teams, I love watching good players, good footballers. And there was a lot of them in that game. They didn't all star, but you've got, Sydney, obviously you've got Buddy Franklin and Kennedy and Heaney was probably his best game for the year. And then the Bulldogs, you've got Bontempelli and guys like this. There's lots of good players out on the ground at any one time.
Eastonwood and Buddy's duel through the whole game was terrific to watch.
Yeah, Lord Eastonwood did a pretty good job on Buddy.
The first half, he definitely won. Buddy's just that thing of eventually he'll just... it's hard to stop him for a whole game.
He could go without a touch until the 20-minute mark of the last quarter and then finish with 5.
Yeah. So
that's the sort of player he is.
So that was a cracker of a game. That was the one high point. Then we had... This was a cracking Saturday night of footy. North playing Carlton.
I watched this game. You just couldn't turn it off.
I watched the second half. I thankfully missed the first half doing my show, but... North were good, like perfect.
They played well. A perfectly competent football team.
They are North and nowhere near. Yeah, North. Everyone's and I'm not pretending I haven't made jokes along this ilk. So, but North, everyone thinks they're worse than they are. They've gone backwards, or they've they lost a lot of key and they're rebuilding. But they at least sort of have that we're trying and we've got some competency in what we're doing, well, then they're going to get beaten by the teams with slightly more talent if they're switched on. But against Carlton, I mean, how we talked about this last week. Last week you and I talked about Carlton's fall and how they've been bad for so long and their membership numbers and all this. I saw a Carlton fan after one of my shows and I was tough listening to you and Sergio on the podcast last week, but everything you're saying is true. And it's like...
I had one guy say on Twitter, because I said, I think they've only got about 30,000 members, which is atrocious for Carlton. He pointed out that they actually have in excess of 40,000 members. But he said, other than that, everything else you said was spot on.
And see, 40,000 is... there's more than 40,000 if everyone signed up.
The big guns.
But you can understand why they wouldn't be signing up, because what drives me absolutely mad about the AFL and the coverage of it all this is this idea of rebuilding.
Yeah.
Because look at Hawthorn. Like, are they rebuilding?
Look at Sydney. When have they ever gone to rock bottom and had to rebuild? They just don't do it. The good, well-run clubs with smart coaches and administrators and football operations managers, all these guys, recruiters, they don't have to rebuild.
But also they have an attitude, like you talk to Sydney people or Hawthorn people, and they just don't accept the low standards that other clubs have come into, and they don't want to finish. Like that, they will fight hard to finish 10th rather than 16th because they know that's about intent and mental attitude. And they also know that the draft in the AFL is not the NBA. You can't pick one great player and it's going to change your whole franchise, as the Americans would say. You've got to recruit across the board. You need a few players out of the second and third round who are at least going to be good, solid players. So bottoming out doesn't really help you that much.
And both those clubs, Sydney and Hawthorn, whenever they've gone or thought they've gone slightly off the pace, they're brilliant at recruiting from other clubs. Like Sydney got Franklin, which shocked the whole world when they did it. But what a touch of genius that's been. And Hawthorn, they moved on. Mitchell, Lewis, and Hodge. But they've now got Tom Mitchell and Jager O'Meara. And they got, to a lesser extent, they got Frawley from Melbourne. But they plug holes and they recruit well from other clubs.
Yeah, but they also don't just focus on let's get one or two stars. They're like, how can we get the players that other people who probably aren't Hawthorn fans don't even really know their names or follow them that much, but who fill all the key. That's the thing. You need the whole team in the AFL. You can't just have one or two stars. And I felt this with Melbourne and I feel this with Carlton. The players themselves, you start talking about we're just rebuilding. It kind of sends this message that we're not expecting you to win.
Yeah,
and then it sends this thing also that Melbourne have all done this. It's like some external messiah is going to join us. First it was Jack Watts and Trengrove and Scully. Yeah. Then it was Paul Roos. We keep waiting for someone.
This year was Jake Lever.
Yeah, we keep waiting for someone external to come, and Carlton do this too. They tried it with Jard, and they keep waiting for and they don't realise that, Melbourne were the same and Carlton were the same. Like, people will attack Bolton and they'll attack Goodwin after that weekend. But I was watching, there's no doubt Clarkson made a lot of changes after that first half, right? Yeah. But even if you are the worst coach in the history of AFL, with that Melbourne, with so forget the coach. So imagine they had almost no coach or a terrible coach.
Or Mark Neeld.
With the talent those players possess on the field, there is no way they should have been held goalless for almost 3 quarters. No. There's just it doesn't matter how bad the coach is. So the idea that it's Goodwin's fault, to me, actually annoys me, because it's taking away from the fact that there is no Messiah coming. Yeah. There's no things Goodwin can't go out and say, hey guys, remember to run. Yeah. Remember to chase people. Yeah. That comes from within the players.
You tackle them.
Yeah. That comes from and stop bombing it to no one and stop chipping it to 3-on-1s. That's players. Yeah. And all the great sporting teams, all the great violence, they all had these 5 or 6 self-made motivated. Like, Geelong had Tom Harley, they had Ling, Brisbane had Michael Voss, they had Black, they had Jonathan Brown.
Yeah.
All the great
Hawthorne,
teams.
had
Hodge and Mitchell and, and Lewis and Gibson and all this. So all the great sides have the players coach the team as much as the coach.
Well, look at the NBA. Look at LeBron James. He's as much as a senior coach as the best player. And he's done it in 3 sides now. Yeah. And taken them all just about to the championship.
And so that's why I just think with both Bolton and I think with Carlton and Melbourne, these are teams that have been allowed to just accept mediocrity and that it's okay, you're young and you're all rebuilding.
Yeah.
And
the odd smashing was going to happen and we'll just have to wear that.
Yeah.
Whereas Sydney or Hawthorn aren't going to wear that.
No, and even like the fact that like Melbourne celebrated, hey, we beat North Melbourne after 17 games in a row of losing. We finally beat them. Like, what a pathetic thing to celebrate.
Yeah.
How much did we celebrate a couple of years ago beating Hawthorn in one game? Yeah. Like, we celebrated like it was our grand final. Lost to Carlton, I think, the next week or the week after. Missed the finals. Did it again last year. Like, we kind of accept that stuff. And I think Carlton have fallen into that trap massively.
Yeah.
That they just kind of, and Melbourne have too, where they just kind of accept this. And this rebuilding myth is...
And Melbourne, who was it who said just a couple of weeks ago that there's no other side that gets happier with themselves quicker than Melbourne? It's true. It's true. It was the same, as you say, last week beating North. It was like we just won a preliminary final into the grand final. Whereas we just beat a team that was tipped to finish on the bottom, basically.
That's right. And we didn't even play well in that game. But the performance on the weekend, both by Carlton, by Brisbane, by Melbourne, were all unacceptable. But you'd have to say Melbourne's was in some ways the worst because Brisbane were up against the reigning premiers at the MCG, and we know that they've got a young side. It's still a deplorable performance. Carlton,
but they've still got a fair few. You wouldn't call them holes, but they don't have stars in 22 positions.
Now Carlton at least they were down in Tasmania. They had Mark Murphy injured in the before the game. They're very young, but Melbourne, there's no reason on paper that Melbourne shouldn't have. I'm not even saying they should have beaten Hawthorn necessarily, but there's no way they should have done what they did, which is not play after quarter time. How do you go in leading at quarter time and then give up for the rest of the game?
It was an appalling performance. And we'll just jump ahead to one of our questions here from a listener, and it's about Carlton. It's from Colin Mack. He said, if Carlton gets its best players out on the park, can we win the flag? Example, Sam Jacobs, Josh Kennedy, Eddie Betts, Bryce Gibbs, Zach Toohey, Sean Grigg, and Jeff Garland.
But this is the thing. I wrote this in the, I don't know if it was in the knee jerk, I think yesterday, where the Carlton fans, this is part of this narrative about Carlton, they say, we're still recovering from the sanctions under Elliott. That got written in the last week. That gets brought up all the time.
How long ago was that now?
Well, this is my point. Look at Essendon. Yeah. I'm not saying Essendon go win the premiership this year, but Essendon have far more recently had a massively damaging scandal and not referring. They act like that never happened. Yeah. In that they want to move on from it. Yeah. And they're doing much better. But then also, you read that list you read out. Yeah. I wrote in the thing. Carlton, even after those sanctions had passed, they actually recruited very well, but it was like they were having a Russell Crowe divorce fire sale. Yeah. They were like, who wants? They either drove out the best players, they went all in for Judd, and they gave up a lot for Judd. Yeah. And once again, under this thing of they thinking that one key player is going to save them, they then let so much talent walk out the door, as you've just read, that's why they're rubbish. It wasn't the AFL. The idea that the AFL sanctions still impacting is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever.
I'll be blaming George Harris for sacking Alex Jezelenko.
But it is it's like the cult. It's like the curse of Norm Smith. At what point does it become such a ludicrous thing?
Excuse. And again, it's teams who, as you say, are looking for an external, messiah. Yeah. Or continually blaming others or blaming something that's occurred in their past. Yeah. Instead of just saying, let's get on with it. And much as we don't like Essendon, you make a very good point that they've been through, as big an upheaval as any club can have in recent times. And I guess this is probably
they retained most of their
some
key
influence
players
from Worsfold. Yeah. But they've basically said, that was shocking, but
they retained most of their key
players. It's year zero. We've started again, and they're doing it pretty well. You got to say.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, I don't think Essendon are amazing, but they're not. You don't hear them saying all the time. They're not. I don't expect them in 20 years from now, which is almost what it is with the Carlton thing. Yeah. Going, something happened to us 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the other thing is they keep saying, well, our recruiting for so long wasn't very good. No, it was good. You just kept trading that talent away.
Yeah.
You actually, when you look at who they got into that, it wasn't like Melbourne recruited terribly and either didn't develop the players or they turned out to be busts, right, for years. Carlton, it's been shown. All the talent was there.
Yeah. I mean, you name anyway. I mean, it was just last week. It was during the day. I was flicking around Fox Footy, and they had like an old early or 90s, late 90s game on, and it was Carlton versus Collingwood or someone, and the ball went down to the Carlton forward line, and it was cleared really easily. And the commentator, I can't remember who it was, he said, "How could Carlton expect to score with a forward line that small? Eddie Betts and Jeff Garlett." And I thought, geez, they'd take both of them back in a heartbeat.
That's right. Well, it is amazing. The whole thing is, and so for Melbourne and Carlton supporters, we feel your pain.
We do.
West Coast played Gold Coast. Gold Coast were in were in Western Australia for 2 weeks because they sold that game to Freo over there, and they stayed over there. And I hope they got a picture with a quokka because they've got nothing else to show. That would have been the highlight. Yeah, they didn't come. They lost both games and badly.
And you'd have to say last week against the Eagles, the Gold Coast, their all Cameroon forward line didn't really work, did it?
Well, you got to say Tom Lynch was the only one that really. You kind of start to say, is Tom Lynch going to stay if they keep playing like that? I get it's hard because they've been away from home for a long time.
There's a lot of people who are closer to the action than you and I saying that Tom Lynch already he's out of there. He's going.
Really?
Yeah. And they reckon Collingwood have got their claws into him, as some are saying, and others are saying Hawthorn. Now, it wouldn't put it past Hawthorn to get Tom Lynch out of Gold Coast. That's how good they are at getting
if you were Tom Lynch and you wanted to come home and you were sick of the nonsense up there, and it depends a bit on how they improve over the next little bit, but you can go and play at Hawthorn with Alistair Clarkson as your coach, play on the MCG all the time, all that sort of, with huge membership base, all that sort of stuff. It's a hard offer to say no to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
this is the problem too with free agency. This is like what happens. The big teams get the big recruits more often than not.
Than the small ones. And the small ones, if they do, they have to pay over the odds just about to get them.
Yeah.
And that's where a team like Hawthorn can pay, maybe not under the odds, but they're certainly not going to be breaking the bank to get them.
But you're offering, I mean, if you're a player and you look at Hawthorn and you look at Clarkson, you're going, do I want to play for arguably the best coach, or easily the best coach of his generation, and one of the best ever?
Yeah.
And the answer's going to be it's pretty tempting.
Yeah. And if you're Tom Lynch, you'll be playing in a forward line with Jared Ruffhead and Cyril Rioli and Jack Gunston, and we'll put you at full forward.
Yeah, look at our midfield and blah, blah, blah.
You got Tom Mitchell kicking it to you every 5 minutes. Jago O'Meara is fit again.
Yeah.
You'd have to think, it's pretty tempting. I might be up for that. I could kick 70 goals next year, no problem.
Yeah, look, especially when it looked like, I mean, it's a long slog. It's going to be up there on the Gold Coast.
Oh, yeah, of course it is. They look to have improved a bit since last year, but they're certainly not going to set the world on fire this year.
Yeah, I just can't believe they didn't just end up playing their games at the Gabba or something for this bit. I think selling that game for Freo when they've already got to sell another one to China. I mean, if I was a Sun supporter, I'd be furious.
Well, you don't get to see them.
But not only that, you're giving up wins.
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
Basically giving up. Well, not just you're giving up. It's like when Melbourne always sell to the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
What price is a win?
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
you're lessening your chances by a fair whack. Essendon defeated Port. I thought Port were okay, just had an off day. I thought Essendon were much improved.
Stringer came good.
Yeah, he did. Even the Essendon supporters started cheering for him at one point.
Yeah.
But the thing about Stringer
every week. Yeah, but
Stringer doing that, there were a few moments where he just did like breathtaking stuff, right? Like there was one bit where about 5 guys tried to tackle him and he just stormed through them.
Yeah.
And goals he kicked him, he's doing it, he's just reminding everyone like how good he can be. And while that's great, you also look at it and go, where's that been?
Yeah.
Like if you've got
why don't you do that every week or at least every second week?
Yeah, that's right. Like if the effort was there all the time. But the one thing I thought that to me, and I know a lot of Essendon fans have been pointing this out in the weeks leading up, Worsfold seemed to put everyone back into the positions they're actually good at. Right, and it seemed to, lo and behold.
Cale Hooker, All-Australian centre-half back. Here's an idea. Why don't we play him at centre-half back?
Yeah, that's right. Why don't we put Stringer in the forward line? Yeah. And so, they do these things. Yeah. And sometimes I think we, the fans, are too simplistic with that stuff. And you think these coaches know so much more than us and they know about. But then there's sometimes like that where you just look and go, sometimes there's a bit of common sense.
Go back 20 years. I mean, if you've got Plugger Lockett in your team, you're not going to experiment him as a floating across the half back line type of player.
Let's put him at full back.
Be a quarterback, drifting in between the back line and the middle. No, you've got the greatest full forward of all time. Play it full forward and kick 10 goals.
Hawthorn Melbourne we've talked about.
Yeah, I'm sick of
Geelong defeated St Kilda. This was not a great match, but it was just it capped off the round beautifully.
Yeah.
Just watching the Saints go down in Cardinia Park, like how it was boring.
And while our thoughts are with Dylan Robertson, who
that was the one notable moment and scary moment.
And it pretty much summed up the round of footy to me and St Kilda.
Yeah.
That without anyone going near him, he just fell over and landed on his head. But
I'm just hopeful that that's not a long-term
I think you'll be fine.
impact.
Irregular
You're the
heartbeat.
Person I know about. I go to about hearts. You've had the heart
irregular
surgery.
Heartbeats, not such a big deal these days, especially when you're young and fit.
Right.
They'll put him on digoxin or something like that, and he'll be good to go.
Right. So you know your stuff.
Yeah, I know. I know all the drugs.
You could come see Dr. Serge.
down at the House of Paradise.
Imagine you have the ability to prescribe things.
well, I can
certainly Stephen Dank all over again.
I can certainly write, illegibly enough on a pad.
The other big story this week, of course, was not only the end of the Com Games, but the closing ceremony had everyone up in arms.
Again, as you said earlier, you caught a bit of it, but you missed the start like the athletes did. But I watched the entire thing, and it just never. I was going to say it never reached any great heights, but it never even looked like getting to any great heights.
Right.
I mean, before you knew it, you realised, hang on, is this just a reunion of Australian Idol runners-ups? That's how it appeared. And then you thought, is this just going to be the start of what's going to be a massive gig?
Yeah.
Is that all of a sudden there's going to be...
Suddenly they'll bring out the big stars.
And out will come Midnight Oil or Kylie Minogue or some massive superstar. And then you painfully had to realise that this was as good as it gets, is having some chick from Australian Idol sing a really lame version of Kate Sobrano's Bedroom Eyes, followed by Kate Sobrano herself singing another song.
Yeah.
And
you think Kate Sobrano should sing the Kate Sobrano song, do you?
Well, it's a bit
and
like...
also, like, Bedroom Eyes.
Playing Cale Hooker at centre half.
Bedroom Eyes. What year are we in? Bedroom Eyes is like the... I mean, is it part... I get, it was a very popular song at the time. I'm not saying it's... But is it like the classic...
And but they opened the whole thing, the whole concert, if you call it that. And it was, some half-baked political statement by having all-female singers and an all-female band. I'm not quite sure what point they were trying to make there.
Yeah.
But... their opening song was Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves.
Yeah.
Again, it's a pretty good song.
Yeah.
But, it's not one that's going to get the entire
It sounds like someone was
stadium.
like, hey, this will be a really great, shout out to, female empowerment.
Yeah.
And you go, that's fine, but what's the context we're doing this in? Especially when they've got actual female athletes who have done amazing things. And they're like, no, we won't let them in. We won't let women who are actually achieving things. Let's just get an all-female group and get them to sing this song.
And as I was saying, a really lame female group. You could have got. You're right. They could have got away with it if this was the opening song of the big musical part of the evening. Okay, you have all your Kate Sobranos and your Danny Ims and these guys, girls up on stage. And for that song, it would have been the perfect time to bring up also on the stage 50 female athletes
the
from
ones
the games.
that were the gun.
They'd all be. They've been on the grog all afternoon. They'd be dancing and having a good time. It would have got the thing off to a bit of
and at least then you could chase some footage of them winning their gold medals and all that. And it actually makes the point they're trying to make instead of just this vague. But the one that seemed to get and I caught the second half, so I got to see the key kind of outrage and enjoyed watching it on Twitter and social media develop, because that's really what it's for. It was the not having the athletes, not showing the flag, not showing the athletes come in.
None of that. And did you manage to get we're going to Birmingham next time? Did you get that little segment?
That was not
How bad was that?
It was terrible.
They obviously went to great expense to film this whole bit about Birmingham.
Yeah.
But honestly, it made you think if you watch that, you'd only want to go to Birmingham if you're an ex-member of the Luftwaffe. So, hey, boys, we missed a couple of bits. It was shocking. It just looked like an industrial wasteland.
But didn't you
which
think...
is possibly what it is.
Didn't you think, like, in some ways, that closing ceremony, to me, sums up the Com Games?
Oh,
and I know
question.
people really got into the Com Games, especially in Australia, because let's be honest, we just smashed everyone. It wasn't even...
the sport was actually really good.
But I still just think, like... Hardcore sports fans, like the general public seem to like the Com Games to an extent, but hardcore sports fans are more interested in the NBA playoffs at the moment, to be honest. They're not that interested in it. Like, it's sort of seen as a bit of a... But I did like, of course, my favourite bit of the whole thing was with Joanna Griggs and Basil. Oh. And Basil sort of was like doing his... He was being fairly forthright for what they're usually allowed to say, because they're usually told to whatever's happening, make it sound amazing. And Basil's a company
guy from way back.
Well, they're professional. Both of those guys are, like, whatever people, whether they like them or not, they're professionals. So if they're paid to be...
They're professional Channel 7 broadcasters.
Yeah, so they're paid to make whatever they're presenting look great and all that sort of stuff. So when Basil said, look, we're disappointed, and he was quite harsh for what they were normally allowed to do.
I thought I reached for the remote and thought, hang on, this actually sounds like it's got interesting.
He's actually saying things. So he was good, but then I like how Joanna Griggs just goes, I'm sorry, Basil, but you're being far too nice. And it's like, he wasn't, for a journalism presenter, he was actually being really harsh. But then she just basically got a petrol hose and sprayed petrol everywhere and then lit the match. She was like, this, and everyone was just, how good is this?
The whole of Australia sitting back going, go Griggsy. How good is this?
But this is the thing so social media gets a lot of negative focus, and for very good reason.
Mainly
a lot of the time,
social media,
but often for very good reasons, right? But the one thing I personally love about Twitter, and Facebook's the same and others, but Twitter's better in real time, is the fact that we get presented this, and it's like happens with the cricket, happens with the football, happens with the Com Games, and so to see Joanna Griggs break their ranks and actually, and she must have had some permission to say it, and just actually be truthful about what was happening, was what we on the public, and you see it on social media, the public aren't idiots. We know what's going on. Like, we know when a game's bad. We know when something is not done well. We know, and it's when people pretend that it's not.
Which is what usually happens.
The Australian sports coverage and media is so everyone's great, everything is great. Yeah. And they don't really let anyone in who's going to say, actually,
that was
this
rubbish.
Is rubbish.
Yeah, that's crap.
And you saw the reaction when Joanna Griggs said that everyone went, oh, thankfully someone just actually acknowledging this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Now, there's been a bit of back and forth about whether Peter Beattie, the chair of it all, he's been apologetic, but it's a bit like he's doing a shocking job at rugby league as the head of that at the moment.
He's just somebody said he's making so many apologies for things going wrong at the moment.
Yeah.
It's like he was still Premier of Queensland.
But that's his modus operandi. When he was President of Queensland, someone would say, oh, people are saying that, Queensland roads are the worst. And this is when he'd been for a long time. He'd say, we are the worst. We're terrible.
Yeah.
We couldn't be more worse. And that's why, we're going to fix it. But he'd just always go to the nth degree and take the punishment.
But
and he's doing this again. He's going, it was terrible. It was a terrible mistake.
Shouldn't have spoken.
And it's like, mate, you're shutting the gate after the horse is bolted.
There are about 8 points that journos brought up to him yesterday.
Yeah.
And everyone he said, we got that wrong.
Yeah.
We got that wrong. Yeah, got that wrong. Yeah, that bit too, got that wrong.
But putting the focus of the closing ceremony on the athlete is not hardly a hard decision.
But why do they get... My question is, how could you... If you're in that position of making a few decisions on things, you don't make that many mistakes in advance.
That's right. But what about when he was being interviewed the other day and he saw a kid and he was saying, he's a kid with a Newcastle Knights jumper and he's the head of the NRL and it was a Barcelona top?
Oh, that was... he's turning into Mr. Bean. It's
chinos, just unbelievable. It's just something else. So I thought his apologies were just, they're just crazy. But it's a weird... they paid $46 million for that closing ceremony. $46 million.
Yeah. Well, that was for the two, the opening and the closing.
Was it? That's right.
Right. But
that's a lot of money.
It's still $46 million.
Yeah.
And
I bet the Rocker Stedford doesn't cost that. I was about
to say, let's say it was 26 for the opening and 20 for the closing.
Yeah.
It's still $20 million. And the biggest name they had was
a lot of those
performances.
Yeah, a lot of those performances would be not being paid.
Well,
like a lot
getting
of dancers
paid bugger all.
Yeah. So
there was that other controversy, the Queensland band Shepherd, who had that big hit last year.
Yeah.
And they were approached because,
they're from there.
They're locals. And they knocked it back because the money wasn't good enough.
I know, and saying that Anthony...
Then you go, gee, I wonder why they couldn't get Kylie,
Yeah, and then you say to Anthony Clear or Danny Im, you say, how would you like to be on the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah.
And they just go, yeah. And they say, what's the pay? And you go, we'll give you a pie.
Yeah.
Like they'll turn up to anything.
You get one of those blue...
it's better than working that night at an RSL.
Yeah, you get one of those blue and yellow trackie tops, and you'll be seen by a million
Hey, you'll
people.
be on TV.
Yeah.
That's what you get paid. Be great for your career. So we put an end to the Commonwealth Games.
Hey, book your tickets for Birmingham.
Get in there. Can't wait. Now, last week it broke that the cricket broadcast was changing. I haven't had a chance to chat to you about it yet because I know you're a huge fan of Channel 9's coverage in recent years.
I think we both are. I think we speak for a lot of people and say that cricket commentary hasn't been as good as it's been in the last year or so.
Oh, yeah, it's been terrific.
Ever since.
How are we going to know what pizzas to eat and sort of thing? But do you think, how nervous are you? I'd be interested, what percentage of the Channel 9 commentary team do you think 7 will just try and import over?
I reckon.
Or do you hope it's not much? I'm hoping it's not much. But
I think it will be not much. I reckon the only one they'll have a crack at is Warney. Purely because
he's Warney.
He's Warney, right? And he's head and shoulders above the rest. I don't think Bill Laurie...
He's got a long relationship with Nine, so it's interesting to see what his contract is with that. Bill Laurie's old enough now, you wonder whether he will bother.
I don't think Bill Laurie would bother.
He's only doing the Melbourne test.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon it's going to... they'd have to make a big play for Ponting... Gilchrist and War, you'd think. They'd be looking at
getting them from Channel 10.
Poaching the Channel 10 is more what I think they're going to probably do. Mel McLaughlin hosted the BBL for a very long time, and she's at Channel 7, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see her thrown into a lot of the coverage and possibly even the test coverage just to send a signal that we're not the, blokey thing of the Channel 9
Mark
commentary.
Howard's Twitter feed, he's angling hard.
Is he?
Yeah, he'll be more than happy to move over to Channel 7.
Oh, right.
If the call would come. or to Foxtel.
So there's a few. I mean, Hamish McLaughlin, he did the tennis and he did the Olympics and various things. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him say, "Well, if you want, I've
the
lost
Mark Nicholas role kind of thing."
Well, that's right. He's lost the tennis.
Yeah.
So this is sort of, well, what do they do with him over the summer? And he's obviously the one being groomed for the Bruce McAvaney role in the future.
Well, what about Bruce? Could you see him doing much in the cricket?
Well, Bruce is such a professional. You could easily throw him in.
He does. He is a cricket nut.
Yeah.
Too.
So,
he's a sports. He's a nut for all sports, but he does know his cricket.
Yeah.
James Brayshaw, he's at 7 now.
Well, hasn't Brayshaw landed on his feet in a way?
Well,
I mean, I don't know whether he was smart enough to read the tea leaves, or whether it was just but you know what I mean.
Anyone could have been that smart in it.
No, but it's all worked out for him because he's doing footy now and he's going to have cricket.
Yeah.
So
he'll finish off his radio show at Triple M at the end of the footy season.
Yeah, and he'll probably not. I think he was doing the Triple M cricket team. Triple M are the ones I'm thinking. They put together a really good coverage of cricket last year.
Will Seven
and
have
I wouldn't
a go
be surprised if they'd have a go a few of them.
At Kerry O'Keefe?
Well, that's I'm just wondering who they'll look at and say, because Triple M had a very good balance of people who were funny and people who actually knew what they were talking about.
Well, maybe Channel 7, you reckon in the cricket they'll go with Lingy?
I'm still worried about this.
And Henri Leconte, maybe.
Just keep him around. I reckon... I live in fear of BT being picked up because he did BBL a while ago. So that would be about,
Yeah, well, he did. I mean, that was going back a few years, but what was that? Was that on SBS or... No, it couldn't have been the BBL.
It was earlier than that.
It was a 2020.
Was it Foxtel?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Roaming Brian at the tests.
So you're looking forward to that. The other one that got done, which I was interested in your thoughts because I know you're a huge fan, is they're putting about 250 odd million into Etihad Stadium to try and turn it into a sports stadium. Yeah. Have they contacted you about when the yoga classes start?
No, they haven't. I thought you were across the yoga. I thought you were the one there.
It's about time they put some money into it, but I might be interested to see if they can really tidy that stadium up.
And they're building they're saying a 7-star hotel for the AFL.
Yeah, because a new headquarters.
Yeah, and a ballroom to have the Brownlow in every year.
Yeah, so they don't have to pay Crown every year.
Yeah.
And they can sell that for other events too.
Well, that's right.
And then is it a 7-star hotel as well that the AFL own?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like an AFL hotel. You'd imagine that. What would they have in an AFL hotel?
Well, there's the Stephen Dank room where you can really get amongst the pills.
And Dan Andrews won't care what you shoot up in the Stephen Dank room. There's all bets are off. You can take
the John Elliott room.
The what?
The John Elliott room.
The John Elliott room. So one place you can smoke, you can vape, you can do whatever
you want in that room.
And what else would they have? They'd have to have as the concierge. They have remember Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction? Yeah. He was the wolf. He could dispose of bodies. He could cover up anything. Yeah, I'd have the wolf.
You think we'd have that? You'd need that, right? Yeah. I think imagine the AFL running a hotel.
Oh, just the minibar. You imagine the minibar.
The prices would be a fortune. It's like for a little 300ml whiskey, it's like $700.
Yeah, exactly. But you could get your secret salt for free in the restaurant.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah.
Israel Folau's in a bit of trouble again. He keeps... well, the problem that rugby's having with this is he said that anyone who's gay will go to hell, basically, in an Instagram post. Now, rugby came out and said they'd talked to him and about toning down his thing, and then he's come back and said publicly, they misrepresented me. I never said I'd tone down my beliefs, right? And rugby has this problem because he believes what he believes, and people can think whatever they want about that, I guess, but they're trying to pretend he doesn't believe what he believes. Yeah. And so they have to make a decision, and they're a bit trapped because Qantas is their major sponsor, and they've said they're not happy about it.
Yeah.
And Israel at the same time saying he's not changing his views.
But then, Qantas are in heavy business with the Saudi Arabians and Dubai Airways, where it's illegal to be gay over there.
Yeah, so you think they're a bit hypocritical?
You could be thrown off a building for doing it over there, whereas Israel, you go to hell. What's the difference? What's worse?
Well, you think Saudi Arabia is hell. But it is an interesting one because they don't really know how to handle it. And his contract ends at the end of this year anyway. So
look, I think everything he says on this subject is completely ridiculous and absurd. But I kind of admire him for sticking to his guns a bit, you know?
Yeah, but the problem I always have with his viewpoint is if it was... So when people say, everyone's entitled to their views, and I'm like, well, that's fine, right? But you're also responsible for your views. You're with great power comes great responsibility. So when people who are, lesbian or gay commit suicide at rates that are far above the rest of the community because of the hatred directed to them and the fact they never feel like they fit, when he comes out and says this, it's not without consequence. He can't just wash his hands of that and go, I believe this, because even if he does fully believe it, it has a massive impact on people. It ends in people taking their lives.
It potentially
this is the thing that
but you can't. The thing is, you can't stop anyone from believing something or saying something.
Absolutely, you can't necessarily. I'm not saying he should necessarily be stopped, but it does mean for rugby union, they have to make a decision. Do they want to provide the platform for someone who has those views? And Margaret Court's in this thing, and I know there'll be people out there going, people should be able to, even I believe this and all this. But, that's at some point in life, the rubber hits the road, whether it's an organisation and it doesn't have to be on this issue, on a range of issues, where you have to say, no, I believe in something. Yeah. And even though you believe in that, we believe that's completely unacceptable because of the consequences. And rugby union is sort of trying to go, we don't want to do either of those things. Yeah. Because you kind of have to either say, we don't agree with him, but he's right to say it, we're not going to take away his platform, we're not going to stop it. Or you say, with that view, we're not accepting that because we think the damage on the other side is worse.
Shut him off to rugby league. They have no problem with it over there.
That's right. But I think they would actually have more of a problem with it in some ways. Like, this is where
they've got enough on their plate, rugby league.
Yeah, but that's where it's this is where they union are trying to pretend that he's going to modify his views and all this, and he's saying no, I'm not. So then what do? And they're doing nothing now. He's called their bluff.
Yeah, that's a tough spot they're in now because they know, as I said, they can't. You can't force anyone to change their beliefs. Of course, you can take away their platform. But they're in that insidious position now as we'd like him to shut up, but we can't force him to shut up, so what do we do?
This is the thing about sports that constantly comes up around a whole range of issues, so violence against women and people who just do horrendous general things, right, is it's not saying you don't have your right to speak or have views or anything, but organisations have to decide. It doesn't, just because you've got the right to speak and hold certain views doesn't mean you get necessarily given privileged positions, and that's the real thing where rugby union, which is struggling with lots of things at the moment, this just makes them once again less appealing to a lot of people out there.
Enormous number of people.
And not just people,
changed,
just people, from, but people of every sexuality look at this. Like the majority of Australians now, we voted yes. Most people don't care. They're over it a bit too. So people doing this, it's so far from mainstream opinion now, especially with the younger generation. If you're trying to position a sport, this is just shocking for you. Yeah. This is a sport that's pulled out of Perth. It's going nowhere in South Australia and Victoria. It's struggling in Queensland and sort of Sydney itself.
Path seems to be a handful of expensive boys-only private schools in Sydney. So it's sort of not spreading its wings too much.
No, and then you start having
this. doesn't help. So if I was the head of the rugby union, I mean, as well as they've got plenty on their plate anyhow, but the Israel Flat thing, I'd almost be tempted to say, just let him go. I don't know how many more years he's got in his contract.
Well, a year.
Another year. So, look,
well, he's offered to quit, basically. He said, if you don't want me, I'll go.
Yeah, or if I was head of the AAU, I'd say, okay, is he? Or maybe it's best that, it's like one of those breakups, It's best for both of us.
But the fact they came out and tried to then pretend he'd sort of been semi-remorseful or back down. And then he comes in and says, no, I didn't. That's
this is
just terrible management. Yeah.
Again, this is just indicative of some of the stupid mistakes they've made on all sorts of issues over the last couple of years.
Yeah, terrible.
But old Izzy, I mean, he's, but it'll soon be time for him to retire anyway, wouldn't it? Then
well, he'd get a run in the NRL. I mean, he's a great he's a magnificent
physical specimen. I mean, we saw that when he played for the Gold Coast.
That's right. Getting to our listeners' question, William Westerman said, is it worse to be on the rebuild and only kick 4 points in a half, or be aspiring to play finals and kick 1 goal in 3 quarters?
It's a good question.
I think it's worse, the Melbourne version.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
I mean, Brisbane are going to have some terrible days.
As we said, Melbourne like to think that they've got 22 superstars out on the field and another half a dozen playing for Casey.
Yeah.
Whereas Brisbane certainly don't think that.
No.
They're still on the rebuild.
They know where
so Melbourne's performance was worse than Brisbane.
Matt Shuey wrote in, does the rising cost of player wages in country football mean canteens will increase the price of steamed dim sims each season? I feel like this is a very personal question.
I was just about to say, I reckon Matt's written this after having paid through the nose for a couple of steamed dimmies.
And he's had a meltdown
over the weekend.
I can just picture him going, it's what?
Let me ask you, what is a fair price for a steamed dimmy at a country football game?
Oh.
Because they'll be on in one of those big silver
what do you reckon they'll be?
With a lid.
$1?
Steamer. $1, yeah. Maybe 3 for $2. $3 for $2 in a bag.
Whatever it is, Matt's just letting the country dim sim sellers know.
Put them on notice.
Yeah, that he's watching them. I love when we get the really specific ones. Yeah. Tony T wrote in, should I allow my daughter to become a journalist?
I'm not sure he meant to send that to us.
I was about to say, he meant to send that to Lee Sales or something. I would say not if she wants, a job that'll be around in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically the problem there. Claire Murphy said, fresh off her passionate and rightfully scathing review of the closing games ceremony, would Joanna Griggs make Commonwealth Games closing ceremony, would Joanna Griggs make a good addition to the Melbourne Football Club coaching team? I tell you, she could play the way she gave that spray compared to how they played on the Friday, on the Sunday.
The great look on her face too.
So good. Just genuine fury.
That was your classic when they cut to the coach's box when another team's just running for their fourth one out the back. It was that classic look. She was not happy. She would fit. She would make a good coach.
Very good for Melbourne. Melbourne needs someone like that.
Imagine coming off than most of Melbourne's forward line
coming off in. If they would have come off at half time and she would have just looked at them and they would have probably played a lot better.
Given the Griggsy look.
Dylan Walton said, did the Commonwealth game closing ceremony further reinforce the theory that all sport on the Gold Coast eventually comes to a bad end? That's very true.
It is very true. I mean, it's hard to argue, and we've gone down this path before, it's hard to argue that any sport has ever been successful on the Gold Coast.
Well, there hasn't.
I mean, no team sport has ever worked.
Nothing's worked.
No
there.
Individual sports ever worked.
There's nothing.
Half the golf courses aren't what they used to be.
No, it's just not a place that's got a sporting culture. It never has.
No.
And we keep trying to force it on them, and the public, whatever a few of them say, the general public vote with their feet.
Yeah.
Every time and go to the beach.
Yeah.
I can't always blame them if someone was sending me the Suns.
As I've said before, if you live on the Gold Coast, you either go to the beach, and if you're really desperate to go see a game of footy, you go to the surf club where you can get cheap schooners and watch it on the big screen.
Yeah.
That's what I do when I'm in Queensland.
Bob said, can you cut up a Melbourne membership card with a cheese knife? Did you see that journalist wrote, it's a Fairfax journo, James Massola or something his name was, he wrote a piece yesterday about how can you raise your kid to be a Melbourne supporter. But then he said, I'm cutting up my membership. Yeah. And it was a 2017 membership.
Yeah. And I wonder, was that his photo or was that put in there by some lazy Fairfax?
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. But it was on social media, I think, as well. And I'm like, you got to cut up the right year.
Yeah. I mean, last year's, you cut it up anyway.
I'm the first to say that was terrible. But the problem, if you're once you're in with a footy team, you're in. It doesn't matter how. I'm saying this as a Melbourne supporter. Even you can't change, and you don't leave. You can be as bitter as you want. This is where I disagreed with Paul Roos about his negative comments. After seeing that, he was so scathingly negative in the commentary and afterwards. I was like, hey, what's with the negative energy, Paul? But you still, I would never cut up my membership and because nothing worse than's already happened's probably going to happen. It's just going to keep happening.
You just can't. I mean, you can be as upset and as bitter and twisted as you like. It's like we before Richmond won the flag. I mean, for years and years and years, Richmond supporters would be the ones famous for cutting up their membership cards. Remember, a whole truckload of horse manure was dumped outside their office on Punt Road. Yeah. You can be as bitter and twisted as you like. But even at that stage, those Richmond supporters who'd done that, if you were to even suggest that they may want to change teams, they'd laugh at you. You still don't. You can't change teams.
And you can't raise your kids in another faith.
Well, you can't. Exactly.
But I sort of also think Richmond fans, Sydney fans, Bulldogs fans, they'll all tell you that all became worth it on that one day in September when they finally got there. And that's why you hang in. It's horrendous, but you just hope that, and it is hope and faith, that one day the drought will break.
Or as somebody said on Twitter the other day with the announcement that the grand final will be played at the MCG until 2047.
Yeah.
He said, as a Melbourne supporter, at least I know now that our next premiership will be played interstate. It'll be one interstate.
Callan Kildurry wrote in, now that Australia has finished beating the former British Empire, should we adopt French as an official language so we can beat the French-speaking nations at the Francophile Games in the interest of national pride? And he wrote that question in French.
He wrote it to us twice, once in French. And I thought, what's this? And then he rewrote it in English. So, Callan, you don't get the T-shirt because you're just being pretentious, a pretentious Frenchman.
Steak Sandwedge wrote in, what should be prescribed when you find yourself agreeing with Basil's embolus? I thought Basil was good in that.
I thought he was terrific. I didn't hear that much of him. I didn't hear him doing a lot of commentary for the games.
Is that why you thought he was terrific?
He's a good host and that sort of stuff, and I thought he did a good job. But he won me over the other night, on Sunday night. And you've got to say, I reckon they must have got on it Sunday night, the Channel 7 guys, because I tweeted something about Basil and Joe Griggs when they did this, as to what a great performance it was. And Basil liked that comment at 3:24 a.m. so
I'm sure he's just having trouble sleeping.
He was full as a state school.
Julian M wrote in, how can I get an organising committee to blame for all the problems in my life?
It's a very good... I don't know if it's a great question, but it's a good idea.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, I'm going to get Peter Beattie to be my president, so I can just blame everything on him.
Everything that goes wrong, and not only can you blame him, but he will actually take responsibility for it. Yeah.
He's happy to. I'll do the media conference.
Yeah.
It's going to be horrendous, Pete. Don't worry.
That's okay. I'll cop it.
All right. So time to give away a T-shirt. I was thinking Claire Murphy with her suggestion to add Joanna Griggs to the Melbourne football coaching team. I like that one.
That's a good idea.
Well done, Claire. And thank you, everyone. Be back later in the week. And if you're up in Sydney, come along and see me when I'm up there. Not this week, week after.
Absolutely.
See you then.